This is the news gang. It looks like all it required was an effective prosecutor and an efficient crime buster. And the widely held view is that the two are already in town. We're talking about the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP Noordin Haji, and Director of Criminal Investigations, DCI George Kinoti. The two came to their respective offices this year, and both have given every indication that they will be consequential. So consequential that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which, by the way, was looking for a new CEO until this evening, has been, in the eyes of some, fighting for relevance. Francis, the ESCC has got a new man, Twalib Abdallah Mbarak. Does this save it from the fight for relevance?
It's been DPP, DCI on one corner versus ESCC, clearly. Look at the fight against corruption recently, and sometimes you feel like ESCC haina muktasari about what is happening. Yet, this is the body that is mandated with fighting economic crimes. But the challenge has been this back and forth between these agencies and the owner of the fight against corruption. And probably the appointment of Twalib Mbarak, if the National Assembly approves his appointment, could probably be a game changer. Because who is Twalib? Where is he coming from? Yet, one of the key contestants for the top CEO job was Michael Mubea, Halake Wako's deputy, who is now exiting. His last day in office is January 10th next year. So probably the new man is part of the attempts to clean up the ESCC and restructure it. Remember during the Mashujaa Day celebrations in Kakamega, President Uhuru Kenyatta made a very interesting observation and a proposal that there is need to restructure how our ESCC operates. And one of it was to, one, make the wealth declaration forms that public and state officers sign every 2 years, make it public or something of the sort. And probably the new CEO is part of those many changes that are likely to happen at ESCC. The case of another broom coming to clean better than the broom that is currently at ESCC.
And talking of these brooms, it's just noteworthy that these appointments are interesting. Twalib Mbarak has a military intelligence background. So does Alexander Muteshi, Director of Immigration.
Absolutely.
Noordin Haji, formerly intelligence. And also Joseph Boynet, the police Inspector General of Police. Yes, what's going on here?
And from what I understand, there's no such thing as formerly intelligence.
You're always
They still remain there. They're still able to wield quite a bit of, I mean, the power that they had, you know, in the offices that they occupied are still quite a bit. But if you remember, there was the whole talk about whether police were using intelligence correctly in their investigations. Well, now they have one of their own. But I hasten to say this. Is it possible that the success, if we can call it that, of these two individuals is due to the fact that the system lets them? There's also politics undercurrent. I mean, like you were talking about with Mays. Think about it now. The president has a legacy. He has no encumbrances. He owes no one a vote, like for 2017. A lot of what you have been seeing is cannibalism in the fight against corruption. Oh, you're targeting our side and you're targeting our side. It just looks like what we say, nikusetiana tu kondani, that, you know, everybody's snitching on everyone. It sort of seems like the system, even though the office is independent according to the constitution, but they are successful so far because the system allows them to.
But there is a huge element of the individual, what the individual brings. Jamila.
It's true, LK. You know, when you talk about the current DPP, his performance has painted the picture of the performance of the previous holder of that office not in a very good light. The previous holder comes across as too cautious or too careful. It is important to remember during the tenure of the previous DPP, who's the current Minister of Environment, Keriako Tobiko, it was a time when the president said, "Mnataka nifanye nini jamani," about the war on corruption. And personally, I don't think the president would say that now with what we are seeing. And you need to remember that, of course, there's a lot of political goodwill right now that the current holder of the office is enjoying. But you also need to remember that this is a very powerful office. the office of the DPP, and that he has a run of 8 years, free of political interference, and the office of the DPP and DCI got more money, got more funding in the supplementary budget. So those are things I think we need to consider when we're talking about the current success of the
But can
DPP
we
and
wait
the
for
DCI.
convictions?
Yeah.
The fight
Are we
against
calling it too early?
the fight against corruption is political. It's a political process. We may say a lot of things, kizungu mingi, I don't want to say nakatok, but the fight against corruption is political. So if you have the right political backing from the very top level, the fight against corruption is likely to be smooth. The only problem is, in the fight against corruption, there are also allegations of kuoneana. Why are you and not? So even then, while the president has made the fight against corruption his big agenda, let alone the big four agenda, I think the big agenda is the fight against corruption. And probably that's one of the legacies that you would want to leave, that it is during my tenure that corruption was fought and fought viciously.
But you see, Francis, there is an element of personal character, the values you bring to the office as a person, your courage to actually execute that office, because the two offices that are very well protected right now, the office of the DPP, you serve for, is it 8 years?
Yes, it's an 8-year term.
A non-renewable term. There is security of tenure. Those who drafted the Constitution thought of it that way, so that you don't rely on the political goodwill, on the political environment of the day.
One example of that is Professor PLO Lumumba. How spirited was he when he was at the helm of EACC? What happened to him? Politics got him out.
If the
But
power
that was before this constitution.
Absolutely,
Yes,
but it still goes to show that politics plays a big role in giving that success. I mean, you know what? He has shown some incredible, traits and characters so far, and some strength. And he's going after this, and he's talking about, what's happening with the court and some of the bail terms. So far so good, but I think let's see how many convictions that we can have.
Truth is, and this is probably one of the things that many people would not talk about. There are some things that President Uhuru Kenyatta is doing today that he would not have done in the last term.
I agree.
There are some people he would not have touched in the fight against corruption last term, but he can now do. Why? Because the argument would be he has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
He has no votes to seek. Well, that is why I say this fight against corruption is very political.
Let's be hypothetical here, Francis, to the same point of Uhuru now taking a new attitude in the second term. Would he have gone this far if this old team, say the old DPP was there and the ESCC as currently constituted, would he have made any steps?
I doubt so. I doubt.
The
Fair
person
question.
matters.
The person matters.
fire
The
in the belly.
integrity,
And that's
the
why
values,
you see,
yeah.
this fight against corruption, it's a political process, but you also have to win the hearts and minds of the public. If they support the process, if they support the fight against corruption, then clearly it will succeed. And that's why previously you used to see, whenever Yvonne is arrested, everybody from Busia County comes and says, "Mtu wetu anaonewa." If I'm taken to EACC or wherever, people will come and say, watu wa banana will come and say, "Mtu wetu anaonewa." But you rarely see that. Dr.
Yeah,
Evans Kidero was
that's
at EACC another day.
Yep.
You didn't see guys coming there.
That's
So
interesting.
clearly it's
That
a
has
political
changed.
process.
Yeah.
Can I throw
No,
a spanner
yes.
in the works now that
Okay,
we're
throw
talking
it
about
quickly
EACC?
before we- yes.
Just real quick. Can the EACC function as a department of the DPP? What does EACC do today that DPP cannot do?
Exactly. You've
The
had
DPP
instances-
cannot investigate. The DPP prosecutes.
Yes.
So EACC is supposed to investigate and hand over the files to DPP.
But the DPP directs
the
investigations.
ECC exactly. So it should be
Can
part
he
of,
not just direct
I
EACC
think
as a
within
small
his-
department? Yeah.
I think what we are seeing already is DCI George Kinoti has also transformed the office of DCI. We're seeing a very proactive Department of Criminal Investigations. And they work very closely with the DPP as they should. In a way, these two have been running and could do a very good job without ESCC.
The fruits
Francis.
of the fight against corruption is in conviction
Yes.
and recovery of assets.
There you go.
If the cases that are being taken to court on corruption matters, we don't get successes in terms of convictions and recovery of the looted money, then all these will
But
be
Francis,
Yeah.
we need to
It
look at
starts-
all the
Exactly.
steps we've taken. Exactly.
It starts with a very small step called "Here is the suspect."
Exactly, and
We
we've
never
seen a
used
lot
to
of
see them in
suspects.
court.
No. We
We
hadn't.
saw the people from Kenya Power, very high positions. We saw governors being taken to
Yeah.
to court. I think it's a very big first step. And talking of the political problems we used to have, that never used to be possible. You cannot even go in a certain direction.
Okay, that's a very, very complex matter. But now, let us turn to happenings of a more complex kind now. This is different. What is going on in our schools? 8 Ambira High School boys were last week caught on video burning their school books, loudly stating they had cheated in their exams, and hurled insults at Education CS Amina Mohammed and the Interior counterpart Fred Matiang'i. The 8 are aged between 16 and 17 years and were taken to court on Monday, where they did not take a plea and were detained until December 3rd to allow time for investigations. Now, in Bomet, police detained around 30 boys and girls who were high school leavers caught engaging in illicit activities. And now, NEC Chairman George Magoha wants pornography sites blocked in the country, saying such websites are to blame for the spiraling cases of teenage pregnancies reported during the national exams. Let's hear what Magoha had to say.
We would also urge those with authorities and powers to consider blocking those pornographic sites from our internet, because I don't know why they are left open.
And now the ICT CS Joe Musheru today directed the Communications Authority of Kenya to probe adult sites on Kenyan internet sphere and look into filtering pornography sites. He says this move would help deal with the rising cases of teenage pregnancies in the country. Yvonne, I'm asking you this. Are we legislating something that we have no business legislating?
Again, yes. We like to take all of these things into parliament, into regulation, into policy, when we do know we are not a country that exactly follows the rule of law, which is one thing. But listen, every family needs to decide what the morals are. It's all right, okay, filter the porn sites. How many parents, and I say this very cautiously because I am not one, but how many parents have phones that they give their children access to? How many parents have bought their children phones? Even before the age of 18, and not just phones, tablets, and all of these, interesting gizmos. This is something that needs to be decided in your household. You regulate whatever it is that is happening there. In any case, you can put a filter. Your kids know how to navigate these filters even before you do.
And you talk about parents, and we mentioned this last week about how difficult it is for parents to talk to their children about these things. So should it start at home? Should we introduce comprehensive sex education, if I can say that, on national television in schools? Kai?
I think we would like to see a more thoughtful approach by the authorities. This is not a simple question. Governing the internet is not easy. Yeah. It's a big, big challenge. And you don't turn up for fishing with a dog leash. You have to think through what is the nature of the challenge that you are facing. What we've seen there are almost casual opinions of the authorities in education ministry. Have they studied the situation, and can they come up with solid proposals? There are those who are talking about comprehensive sex education. You can't talk about comprehensive sex education without an element of involving the parents and asking them what their views are about this, because comprehensive sex education, and we've seen some of the stuff that is already circulating in the internet, will be quite controversial for Kenya, because you're talking about introducing topics that are so detailed to very young kids. So this is not an easy conversation, and to the education authorities, they'll have to be more thoughtful, more methodical in their approach. Let them come with a very, very clear approach, because you don't also construct a wall to keep away birds.
Francis, as a parent, how old is old enough, or how old is too young to start talking about your children about such issues?
I think the important issue here is...
You didn't just do that.
Start at home.
Yes.
If you cannot talk to your children about some of these things, then how and why do you expect the teacher to take the responsibility of parenting on your behalf and teaching your children in school? I mean, do one, let the teacher do the other, or probably complement what you are doing at home. If we can't have these discussions at home, telling our children this is the right thing to do, maybe at small bits, in intervals, because clearly the modern day child knows so much more than probably we think. I think that's where the real issue is. So it's upon you, the parents.
True. And let's
You're
see
full
how,
of
as you said, the
porn
government needs to
puns
think
today.
a bit more about this instead of just going straight.
Comprehensive sexual
into-
education should actually start in the home.
I agree. Parents should be able to tell their children this. They really should.
Before we can even start talking about what's happening in schools.
True.
Be
Our
the
last
person
word
of
for today.
authority.
But even before you go to the last word, by the way, those Ambira High School kids, what are they going to be charged with? Is
They are not
there-
charged. In fact, they didn't even take a plea.
Well, they sought 7 days, and those 7 days will end. So when they bring them back, I highly suspect this whole situation is to punish them a little bit, and then
Iwe
they
funzo.
probably be
Kwa
acquitted.
wengine
Liwe
na tabia
funzo
kama
kwao
hiyo.
na kwa watu wengine
Yeah,
wenye
yeah,
tabia kama
yeah.
hizo.
You raise a key issue here, Francis. My problem will be with the courts. How did the court allow itself to get caught up?
And to detain them for 7
To
days.
detain kids for 7 days.
Without
There'll be no
charging them,
charge.
yeah.
We are all waiting to see which part of the law, penal code, they'll use to charge these kids. In the end, the courts also will have taken some egg in their faces at the end of this. That was an emotional decision by the court. I don't think the court should have gone that direction.
And before I forget, one of the things that they said in the video was that Tumeiba Mtiani, and Mr. Magoha said that they'll look at the results from the school and determine whether there was any cheating that happened, and not all the students in that school are going to be penalized, or it won't be a blanket issue there with that school. I think we are now done. Okay, last word?
Yes, indeed. And some time back, someone described Kenyan adults as, quote, peculiar. And so peculiar indeed, just sample this. Instead of fixing problems around Kenya's #1 food crop, a choreographed narrative is now emerging, asking farmers to abandon maize farming and instead plant avocados. 2, the Environment Committee of the National Assembly is offering its desperately required wisdom on the saga over a block of apartments constructed too close to the Nairobi Dam. The verdict of the MPs, Nairobi Dam is dangerous and should be decommissioned. 3, the MP's wisdom seemed to come straight from a county governor who recently advised those who construct buildings on riparian land to remember to move the rivers. And 4, that governor's wise advice could well have originated from a former South Rift member of parliament who told those encroaching on Mau Forest not to worry because rain comes from the clouds, not from the forest. Now be aware, just in case Nairobi Dam becomes an avocado farm.
Interesting. And, by the way, there's a very disturbing situation where police officers are being fought by civilians. There's some videos that have been circulating, one in Nakuru, and clearly shows that our police officers are also in trouble. But would you also think that probably the often accusations of police brutality have something to do with this, that civilians could be saying, so, utadu. And talking of utadu, Karuri Primary School grounds, there was a military recruitment. And so many of those who turned up were not recruited. Why? Because they had brown teeth. That is a discussion that comes every so often when there is police or military recruitment. Brown teeth. So in a country and in a time when policing and military issues are intelligence-led, brown teeth, what has it got to do with being a good police officer or a good military officer?
And do you remember when we were children, how everyone would be on their best behavior when visitors came home? Now, this week, we had a horde of visitors who are in Nairobi to attend the Blue Economy Conference. Now, while they were here, we witnessed a change in speech.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta.
And when they left, it was a case of return to factory settings.
Our guests now have already washarudi kwa nchi zao. So kwa niaba ya Rais Kenyatta, not Kenyatta, because wanaenda. Tunatumia ya kukaribisha international communities.
You know, Waswahili husema mgeni njoo, mwenyeji aponye. This was a case of mgeni njoo, mwenyeji apone.
So let's get to our top two leaders today. Before I begin my last word, I'd like you to listen to what the Deputy President of this great nation has been saying about the gender bill.
Wale watu wanasema ati wanawake ati hawapaswi kupatiwa nafasi ya uongozi katika Kenya kwa sababu wako na sijui upungufu hii na upungufu ile. Hawana tofauti na wakoloni waliotuambia ya kwamba hatukuwa tayari kuwa nchi huru kwa sababu hatuwezi kujisimamia. Sisi sasa ni nchi huru. Tumesimamia mambo yetu sawa sawa ama tujasimamia? Let us give women an opportunity for leadership in Kenya.
Well, the Deputy President, as you've heard there, and his boss, His Excellency the President, have been waxing lyrical about the value of our mothers, our wives, and our daughters. Are they speaking from both sides of the mouth? It's no wonder that MPs are not towing the party line. The President and his deputy cannot purport to whip members to vote on the gender bill when they themselves are in contravention of the Constitution. The cabinet itself has failed to meet the 2/3 gender requirement. In addition, they have failed to comply with a court order by the late Justice Onguto, who in 2016 ruled that the nomination of the cabinet was done in contravention of the principle of the rule of law. Now, if they really value mothers, daughters, and wives, like you hear them say, then surely they would lead by example. Or else I would not want to imagine that the top two leaders, the president and his deputy, are dishonest men. So, that's my take tonight.
And I think that says...
As the last word.
Show Meisha.
So, we will be back here. Does anyone want to try the American accent?
I know you want to
now
try.
that Joe is away,
Oh,
so, you know,
wow.
and he will be back, and we will be back with factory settings.
I expect
Next week. Next Thursday. It's the gangsters.
Thank you.
What up, what up? Good night.